Today we are talking about the first Dev Insight. Dev Insight is not the same as your normal patch or update notes, and as such there's no written version either, which is why this whole format is a little bit different, at least for now until I figure out some way to do it. But it is still some sort of patch note style thing, and as I tuned in a little bit late, I decided to instead go with this style. So the patch notes from now on in Season 6 will be every month, but there will be new content in between. The main reasons why the patches are more spaced out is so that the patches can be released on all platforms at the same time, which is important for crossplay, though smaller hotfixes can be released in between. Also, it gives more data per patch for balancing decisions, so as Ajax called it, less hectic changes overall, and it increases the transparency via the Dev Insight that we have instead. So HiRes/Titan can talk about which goals they had, if they were reached, and what changes will be made and why they're made. In other words, it sounds like we'll have these once a month as well, with the Dev Insight plus some new skins, etc. That will be 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks for the next patch notes, and Dev Insight again after 2 weeks and so on. Furthermore, Season 6 has finally been announced for next week, starting on the 11th. I hardly got any time on PTS at all, but I guess it's partially due to me being busy too, so oh well, we'll just test everything on live instead. Also, cross progression will be a thing with Season 6, not just cross play, but also cross progression, meaning you can link your accounts. You can do this on my.hirestudios.com. There's a button there when you log in for linking accounts, and that allows you to link the accounts between multiple platforms, which will be relevant in the context of crossplay launching for all platforms except PS4 as well. HiRes2 has made a tweet reaching out to Sony and PS4, hoping that they will be able to get it soon. So far, they haven't been able to. Maybe help them out a little bit by retweeting it. And if you have a Twitter, you might as well follow @DukeSlothTV. Now, there were some complaints regarding the new chest reward system, and I think overall it's still not going to be as good as the one we had before for the first wins of the day. And instead, we will now have different chests. The chests will have slightly different loot. The lowest tier of the chest is removed and the highest tier is removed, and you just have the mid-tier chest, but they will have a few more skins apparently. So we'll see how well that works out in the end. Keyboard and mouse control for console is also coming. If you're playing with keyboard and mouse, then you're getting matched against others that play keyboard and mouse if you choose. So if you don't want to do the full crossplay experience, so that's an option you have, or you just do crossplay like normal. On February 19th, the Switch version of SMITE will also go free to play, so that is another thing to look forward to. I think that will bring in a lot of new players as well, which I think is pretty cool. And on top of that, for those of you interested in this, all gods are free to play this weekend, and if you get the 3 first wins, you get an Enigma chest. And that brings us to the balance section. Normally I would talk about balance that will be happening in the patch here. In this case it's a bit different. We are going to learn about where HiRes thinks potential changes can be made and which changes are planned, and they also want feedback on this beforehand. So if you don't like a potential change, then you can voice it before and they can possibly reconsider or adjust the change. The first changes are regarding warriors. Now, warriors are supposed to be a lot better come Season 6. HiRes was not happy with their state and specifically wanted to adjust the strength of Warriors and Guardians Blessing in comparison, so they're more even, and Warriors and Guardians as roles in general, so that Warriors come back more to solo. They've done various changes in that regard, for example by buffing Warriors Blessing, increasing the base health of Warriors and adding a new aggressive objective. But if that's not enough, they are thinking about adding potential further buffs in patch 6.2. but only after having seen the outcome of 6.1, so that's still in the works. Mages, on the other hand, might see possible nerfs. Right now they have the potential to get really ahead, partially due to their itemization, and this is especially based on pro feedback, so HiRes is considering to adjust that. I personally suspect that this would have something to do with the overwhelming amount of protection reduction, which I talk about over and over and over. And the other reason why mages might be targeted is because of another role, being duo lane. Duo lane generally feels weaker than the other roles, and HiRes decided that they want to keep an eye out on the mages, on mid, and on jungle, the assassins, and that way maybe give duo a bit more of a push. I'm a bit worried that that may lead to solo actually getting more of a push as well, but we'll see about that. So in that regard, assassins will potentially or very likely also see nerfs. These are basically already planned through and already being tested right now. They will have some early game jungle nerfs that are already being worked on, and one of them is something regarding the speed buff. Right now, speed buff allows for very good level 2 ganks with a lot of chase potential because no one really has boots at that point, and that is something that HYRES wants to tackle. How exactly they haven't said yet, but it sounds like we can expect nerfs to speed buff. Additionally, Assassin's Blessing gives too much of a damage spike when evolving through the extra pen right now, and that puts one jungler ahead of the other if he finishes at first by a lot, and that's something that HYRES doesn't like in this current state, so those will be looked at. I'm, to be honest, obviously biased here, but also kind of unhappy about this because I think Assassin's Blessing already is such a forced item compared to the other starter items that you can opt into the other blessings, because it really doesn't do anything outside of being a jungle item that helps you jungling with a little bit of pen to kind of give it some purpose outside of that. Now don't get me wrong, 10 pen is good, but it's still not gonna compete with an item like Warrior's Blessing right now, for example. Level 2 ganks being a problem, on the other hand, I can absolutely see. And then there is also one specific god that will receive changes, and it is FREYA. FREYA did not really reach what she was supposed to reach with the changes. She's not balanceable the way that HYRES liked it to be, and as such, they are looking at her burst. So they said they want to nerf one ability slightly, or reworking it slightly rather, so that she has less burst, and we can kind of guess that that will be the one. It could technically also be the old, but I think it's very likely that the one is the ability that will be reworked again, so that her damage output is more of a DPS focus and not that bursty. And I think we can agree that that's probably for the best. I think most people didn't really enjoy FREYA in her current state because she kind of took away some of the old flavor and just turned it into a burst mage hybrid AA god that did too many things too well. So yeah, good changes, I guess. I hope. And then we also have balanced progress reports now. Balanced progress reports are basically looks back at the changes from the patch, where HYRES looks at the gods that had changes and how those changes actually ended up being, if they ended up being successful or not. In order to look at these changes, we have to have a few outlines first. So first of all, the statistics that are being referred to here are from all platforms, only players that are in Platinum or higher, only Conquest, and both from ranked and casual. I'm not quite sure how that works with the casual statistics, if they check if the player has played ranked and therefore check based on that on their casual games, or if they have an ELO threshold in casuals where they say this is equal to Platinum level of play. I can't tell you that, they didn't disclose that, but they said it's Platinum plus and it's ranked in casual, so it's one of those. And there's 3 things that HYRES looks at here from now on. The first one is perception, so a change might be good but not feel good. And in that context, there are things to look at like play count, ban rate, and player feedback in general to see if the patch is being received well overall. Then there is reality, which is just the statistics that have come out, like win rate, KDA, and damage dealt, to see how the god is actually performing in the game, aside of what people think about the god overall. And last but not least, the goals, to see if what was planned was actually achieved. And this is more in hindsight, so the changes that we are looking at in this one are for patch 5.23. First was Aquatic. He had a decreased slow duration on his 1 down from 3 seconds to 2 seconds, and the duration of his ultimate was reduced from 6 seconds to 5 seconds. The perception of the player base was that many players still wanted nerfs, thought the nerfs were too weak, were not enough, tackled the wrong things, and yeah, overall not good. The reality was that Aquatic went down from being the 29th performing god on the list of the highest performing gods to the 75th, so he dropped hard. His popularity wasn't too high to begin with, he was in 78th place before, now he dropped down to 96th place. So relatively low win rate and even lower popularity. As such, HYRES concluded that the nerf was overall impactful and considered a success by them, but the unfortunate thing in that context is that he is still perceived as a frustrating god to play against. With Guan Yu, things were a little bit different. His heal amplification was increased from 1.5 to 1.7 times. This wasn't perceived very meaningful by most players. They said, yeah, it's a small change, but it doesn't really feel like much. However, his performance went up from being the 38th best god to the 9th best god in the game. His popularity didn't go up much though. He went from place 89 to place 82. So this was a significant buff to Guan Yu that definitely increases performance, but the perception on the player side is definitely not there because it doesn't feel like that much because it's a heal and not the normal damage numbers, I suppose. High-risk recommendation, just play him more and see how he feels now. Hades had his base movement speed increased and he would now get up to 160 protections of each kind on the ult. The problem with this change was that the protection value was basically underrated because what people were asking for beforehand was mitigation. They wanted mitigation and they thought that protection was the wrong way to go, and that's why the buff was bad. My personal opinion is that the buff had other issues. It's more like not quite targeting everything that is problematic about him, but whichever it be, the reasoning for going with protections was that it is better for a bruiser to get higher protection values, whereas tanks benefit more from high mitigation. The whole thing is a bit more complex than that, but that's just a simple breakdown how they put it in the patch notes. And another reason why they went for protections is so that at least some counterplay still exists through percentage penetration. Hades' performance went up from being the 11th best performing god to the 2nd best performing god. That is also tied to the fact that not many people were playing him though. His popularity went up from being the 77th god to being the 37th god though, meaning now more people are playing him. So overall this was most definitely a strong buff, which was not perceived as that strong because many people wanted different things to be changed about Hades, especially regarding the mitigation. Vamana was an interesting case. His buff was to his ult with the stacking HP shield as well as faster ticks and the possibility to walk through players. The perception was initially very positive. A lot of people liked the change or liked the fact that Vamana got buffs in general. After playing him a little bit, some people thought that it may be a little bit too much. He went from top 58 to top 14, so a very high performing god, and his popularity went from 93 to 12. This, however, was only in Conquest. The spike was not visible to the same degree in other modes, so his popularity only really went up by that much in Conquest. His ban rate did not see a drastic increase so far, but is slowly rising. So high-risk looks especially at ban rate when it comes to nerfs, because if you see a god being banned a lot, it means that god is very frustrating to play against, and that is something that should probably be adjusted relatively early. And as such, they keep an eye on Vamana to see if in the future the nerfs become more necessary because he keeps getting banned more and more and more. High-risk considers the buff successful because it made the god more useful, but maybe a bit too useful. Cuchulainn was the last god here. His ult has its cooldown increased down to 85 seconds. The perception of that was very interesting because many people apparently still perceived Cuchulainn as rather strong anyways, even before these changes, and as such they didn't even think that the ult buff would change that much. It's such a high value in terms of cooldown that taken off some of the top there doesn't really feel like much to players. And the interesting thing is that Cuchulainn wasn't actually very strong before in terms of win rate at least. When it comes to win rate, Cuchulainn is currently at place 96. And the interesting thing is that didn't change at all between the buff and how he was before. So still 96, was 96 before. His popularity had a minimal increase from 57 to 56. As such, the verdict for this one was that high-risk thought the change was not very impactful or good and just didn't really hit the spot for Cuchulainn. Yeah, so we can possibly expect more changes in the future. Aside of that, there were some more updates from high-risk. The Combine starts this week, so if you want to try for an SML spot, that starts now. And the SCL qualifiers will start next week. We also had the Olympians announced. Most of you already know that by now. So congrats to the winners here again. And if you need help with anything, you can reach out to them and it will be directed to Hi-Res. There were also some new skins in the patch, but due to time constraints, I will have to leave those for tomorrow. I will make a quick video then. As many of you already know at this point, I'm incredibly busy this month and I have very little time to make videos in general. So yeah, sorry, I'll have to split this one a little bit. I hope you can understand. If you want to watch some more videos in the meantime, I recommend checking out Super Teats. I will link her right here. And other than that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the subscribe button and maybe the bell, it helps me out. And if you're old to the channel, feel free to click the like button if you like this video. See you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth out.